In the South China Sea, a modern David and Goliath story unfolds. China, a global superpower, faces off against the Philippines, a smaller nation armed with international law. This isn't a war of armies, but a tense standoff of Coast Guard vessels, fishing fleets, and diplomatic brinkmanship. The South China Sea is a vital maritime artery. One-third of global shipping, worth over $3 trillion, passes through these waters. Beneath the waves lie untapped oil, gas, and some of the world's richest marine ecosystems. For the Philippines, it's about protecting its exclusive economic zone and the livelihoods of its coastal communities. For China, it's a matter of national pride and projecting power across the Indo-Pacific. What began as minor disputes over fishing rights has escalated into dangerous confrontations. Chinese vessels swarm contested areas, harassing Philippine supply missions to the BRP Sierra Madre. Water cannons, lasers, and aggressive maneuvers are now common, raising the risk of a miscalculation that could draw in global powers like the United States. At the heart of the dispute, China's ambiguous 9-dash line, claiming nearly the entire sea, versus the Philippines' reliance on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. China's claim is taught as fact at home. The Philippines' claim is anchored in international law. These frameworks are mutually exclusive, creating a legal and diplomatic impasse. The world watches, knowing the stakes extend far beyond these two nations. The question remains, can this standoff end without catastrophe? To understand today's standoff, we must look back. China's narrative claims centuries-old ties to the South China Sea, citing ancient maps and artifacts. The Philippines counters with a history rooted in proximity and post-colonial sovereignty, arguing its fishermen have used these waters for generations. The Kalayaan Island Group was formally claimed by the Philippines in 1978, asserting rights over features close to its shores. After World War II, a power vacuum emerged. China's 11-dash line map appeared in 1947, later revised to the 9-dash line, but was ignored for decades. The discovery of oil and gas in the 1970s transformed the dispute into a high-stakes contest, prompting all claimants to solidify their positions. Islands were occupied, structures built, and the region slowly militarized. What was once a remote maritime space is now a crowded, contested arena, setting the stage for today's direct and often hostile encounters. At the heart of Beijing's position is the 9-dash line, claiming about 90% of the South China Sea. China calls this an indisputable historical right, but the line's ambiguity, no precise coordinates, unclear scope, makes legal challenge difficult. Most of the world, including the US, rejects the 9-dash line under UNCLOS, which China ratified in 1996. To enforce its claim, China has built artificial islands with military bases, runways, and missile sites, transforming reefs into strategic outposts. A vast fleet of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels, often disguised as fishing boats, swarm contested waters to intimidate and obstruct other nations' ships. By operating below the threshold of open conflict, China exerts control without direct war, putting immense pressure on smaller nations like the Philippines. This daily reality defines the struggle for the South China Sea. The Philippines grounds its claim in international law, specifically UNCLOS, which grants a 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. Many contested features, like Mischief Reef and Second Thomas Shoal, fall within this zone. The BRP Sierra Madre, a grounded WW2-era ship, serves as a Philippine outpost and symbol of sovereignty. Its marines depend on risky resupply missions, often harassed by China. Manila has renamed its waters the West Philippine Sea, asserting its rights and rallying international support. The Philippines frames the dispute as a test of the rules-based order. If powerful nations can ignore international law, global security is at risk. This appeal has become central to its diplomatic strategy, seeking allies who value freedom of navigation and peaceful dispute resolution. The standoff is about more than territory. It's about upholding international norms. In 2013, the Philippines took China to international arbitration under UNCLOS, shifting the conflict to the legal arena. China refused to participate, but in 2016, the tribunal ruled overwhelmingly in favor of the Philippines. The ruling declared China's 9-dash line had no legal basis, and that features like Mischief Reef and Second Thomas Shoal were within the Philippine EEZ. China's construction and interference were found to violate Philippine rights and harm the marine environment. The decision was legally binding, a major victory for the Philippines and the rules-based order. Yet, China rejected the ruling and intensified its activities, ignoring international law. The Duterte administration initially downplayed the win for economic ties, but under President Marcos Jr., the Philippines has reasserted the tribunal's findings. The legal victory stands, but enforcement remains elusive. The dispute has entered a new, more volatile phase. Since the 2016 ruling, tensions have only escalated. China's gray zone tactics, coercion, and intimidation below the threshold of war are now routine. The China Coast Guard and Maritime militia swarm contested areas, harassing Philippine vessels, especially those resupplying the BRP Sierra Madre. Water cannons, lasers, and even boarding actions have turned routine missions into high-stakes confrontations. China's goal: make the Philippine position untenable without firing a shot, wearing down resistance through constant pressure. The Philippines has responded with assertive transparency, documenting and publicizing Chinese aggression, embedding journalists, and rallying international condemnation. Each incident becomes a global PR battle, but China's actions on the water continue. The standoff is now a war of attrition: steel hulls, water cannons, and psychological pressure. The cycle of confrontation and counter-messaging shows no sign of ending. The dispute's economic toll is severe, especially for the Philippines. Filipino fishermen are denied access to traditional grounds like Scarborough Shoal, pushing communities into poverty and threatening food security. Energy security is also at risk. Oil and gas exploration in the Reed Bank is repeatedly halted by Chinese intimidation. For China, the calculus is complex, securing resources and shipping lanes, but at the cost of damaged international reputation and strained regional ties. China's aggressive posture undermines its Belt and Road Initiative, creating distrust among neighbors. The dispute raises risks for global trade. Shipping companies and insurers factor in the threat of conflict, increasing costs worldwide. A major clash would have catastrophic economic consequences far beyond the value of the contested resources. This shared vulnerability is a powerful incentive for peace, if only it were heeded. The economic stakes make resolution urgent but elusive. The dispute is global. America, bound by a defense treaty, conducts freedom of navigation operations and affirms support for the Philippines. The G7, Japan, and Australia back a rules-based order, providing diplomatic and material support. ASEAN's response is fragmented. Some members are wary of criticizing China due to economic ties. Negotiations for a code of conduct with China drag on, with critics calling it a stalling tactic. China counters by framing the U.S. as an outside meddler and leveraging economic influence to win regional support or silence. Many nations are caught between security concerns and economic dependence on China. This web of alliances and rivalries ensures the dispute remains central to Indo-Pacific geopolitics. The China-Philippines dispute is a clash of history versus law, ambition versus rights, power versus principle. China's militarized islands and gray zone tactics have changed the seascape, but at a diplomatic cost. The Philippines, armed with the 2016 Arbitral Award and new alliances, fights to maintain its presence and protect its people. The risk of miscalculation at sea is ever present. One mistake could spark a wider conflict. Both sides remain locked in irreconcilable positions. Diplomacy has yielded little progress. The world watches, knowing the outcome will shape maritime law and the balance of power in the 21st century. As ships maneuver in contested waters, the ultimate question remains: can this conflict be resolved before it spirals out of control? The answer for now is uncertain.